Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Now I must tell you that knowing this event was coming up, the original plan was to actually present to a live audience here in South Australia where I live, and we assembled a live audience and I actually presented this show to them, and sadly there was an audio problem and we weren't able to bring you that footage, and I've had to reshoot it here in the comfortable surrounds of our own dining room here. But the night, regardless of the audio problems, held a great deal of joy. And there is an astonishing amount of joy to be had in tea. And so I present to you the second blend, Joy, and I'd like to explain to you what went in it and why I find it a joyful blend. Now this is a blend of green tea, white tea and flowers. And let's start with the white because it's most unusual. I've put it in a big bowl because a little one doesn't do it justice. This is sao mi, and it's a particularly strange version of sao mi because it has large leaves and has a lot of sticks. And basically this is a tea that is thought by some to be a very low class tea, or it's a very low grade of tea. And instead of being processed into black tea, where it would be not a great quality anyway, it's actually been processed into white tea, and the result is a white tea that has a much stronger flavour than most white teas. So it's discernibly white tea, but I like it. It's rough, it's got a real grit to it that you just don't get in a white tea. So it's kind of the opposite of a nice fine white tea, but it actually shares a lot of the characteristics. But for me, this is a product that used to be thrown away, or it used to be used in the lowest of the low black tea processing, and so to me there's a great joy in the recycling aspect of this, the fact that this was seen as a waste product. Now I use this as a blending tea. I do drink it, but I mainly use it as a blending tea. It's one of the few white teas that can actually carry its flavour into a blend. So I love this sao mi that I get from some Chinese people. I don't speak a lot of Chinese, or none. They don't speak much English, but we bump along, and there's a great joy in this tea for me. So it forms the basis of the Joy blend. Now, in addition to running a tea business, my wife and I run a human resources business, and we do some training and we do some particular work with people in different groups. One is people with anxiety, that my wife is a specialist in, and the other group that we do a lot of work with is migrants. And last year we were running a migrant course, and one of the Chinese people was a little bit surprised when I quoted the poet Lu Yu. Chinese culture not being very obvious here in Australia, unless you're Chinese, and but of course if a poet writes a lot about tea, I'm bound to know about it. And this lady was called Emily, and she was remarkable because she had moved here from China and was highly qualified, and despite being highly qualified and speaking beautiful English and excellent Chinese, one presumes, she was working in a chicken factory cutting up chickens, and it's hard. It's hard as a migrant. I can't imagine what it must take to rip up all your roots and go and try to make a better life for yourself and your family in another country. And one day Emily brought this in and gave it to Anne and myself, and it was a green tea. I don't know much about it because I don't speak Chinese, but it quotes Lu Yu on the tin, which is why she thought of us. And when I opened it up, I found it was almost like a sencha, almost like a Japanese style, but Chinese. And it's a really interesting tea. So drank a little bit of it, but most of it has gone into the Joy blend that you have hopefully in front of you. Of course, if the post hasn't worked and you're drinking something else entirely, it's going to take a little bit of a gloss off the evening anyway, isn't it? Right. So there's a joy in friendship, there's a joy in recycling, there's a joy in tea, there's a joy in sharing. And there's a saying that I love, and that is that the earth laughs in flowers. because there is a massive joy in combining tea, Camellia sinensis, which is all we've used so far. Every single ingredient we've used in both these blends has been tea, but now added to joy is some flowers, and I'm going to pick some very special flowers, and I'll show you why I've picked them. So one of the flowers that you'll find is in the tea in front of you is the jasmine flower. They're little white flowers. They come out of China, and you also get them in Thai tea and to an extent in Indian tea. They represent Asia in our tea. They represent that sprawling continent that is so full of hope and promise and despair. But when you go there, it's so full of joy. You go to places like Thailand, and the colours and the sights and the sound, and people are so happy with what they've got that I think it behoved me to include jasmine to represent the joy of Asia. Now, soon we'll be heading off to Europe, and there's a great joy in Europe for us too. Catching up with friends and relatives, meeting people that we know online. And one of the most astonishing floral ingredients you can use in tea is this, the cornflower. These are from Switzerland. The colour and beauty of this blue cornflower is just astonishing to me. It has long been a favoured blending device. It turns up in our Fleur de Provence tea. I didn't want to go down the path of putting it in an Earl Grey and calling it English Earl Grey, as most tea blenders do. I mean, I'm not quite sure why putting Swiss flowers in Indian tea makes it English Earl Grey, but you have to ask one of the others to explain that to you. But I do love this ingredient. Just to actually put it in a black tea is gorgeous. In this case, it's in a green and white tea. Now, I've chosen to include a little bit of verbena. This is a lemon verbena. And the reason for verbena is quite interesting. I got onto the Central Park database and looked at all the botanicals that are growing in Central Park there in New York, because I wanted something to represent New York. And one of the things that does grow in Central Park is verbena. So this is for you guys. This verbena, it's in there to represent the joy of New York, and the joy of this evening, and the joy of friendships forged over tea. And lastly, there's one final floral that we've included in joy, and it's this. Hard to recognise from the small camera, I know, but this is lavender. This is beautiful little lavender flowers, and we use lavender in several of our teas. We use it in Lady Devotea, we use it in Fleur de Provence. It can be a bit of a tongue number if you use too much, but in just the right quantity it adds a gorgeous balance to tea. But the reason that we've included this today is it's from our garden, and we've grown it. And so this is our joy for you.